Stephen W. Richardson Ronk. It's really great.
Robert Merrick.
Here we are for our second episode. We are jumping into the specific stops of the Tabernacle of Moses. Before we jump into this, this episode is brought to you by our latest song release. Jesus Forever is now available. By the time you are watching this episode, the song will have been available to you on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where you stream music. You can follow us on social media, on all the various places that social media lives. Mm-hmm. Find us, Tabernacle. Get rid of all the vowels. That's us, Tabernacle.
That's a great way to say that. You know what?
Cut all the vowels. I'm not going to sit here and try to spell it because I'm not great at spelling.
In keeping with the Hebrew tradition,
yes.
Removal of the vowels.
Get out of here, vowels.
Just consonants.
It's too much time. It's like Kevin from... when he cuts out all the extra
and people have to ask him more questions. They're like, Kevin, what did you mean by that?
He cuts out all the words because it takes too much time.
No speak much.
Yes.
Quick. Like,
we cut out all the vowels.
What do you mean?
And still pronounce the word the exact same way. Okay, so very quickly, we're going to jump into the gate, which is the first stop in the journey of worship, this Tabernacle of Moses. But I'm going to give a quick kind of overview. In total, for the journey of worship, there's 5 stops. Mm-hmm. And the way that we categorize these is we have the gate, we have the altar, we have the laver. The holy place occupies 3 separate pieces of furniture, but we take all 3 of those pieces of furniture and that room and categorize that as the holy place. And then we have the Holy of Holies. Now, the concept of the journey of worship is we're not assigning these things after reading and studying. There are heart postures that we think are appropriate for each of these stops.
Right.
And we'll get into that. That's kind of like, that's the most Christianese way that I can say it, heart posture. But think of it as like kind of identifiers.
Yes.
There's characteristics of each stop.
So, yeah, because whenever worshipers were coming into the tabernacle, there was certain feelings.
Yes.
Sorry to throw another like subjective term in there. Feelings.
Yes.
There were certain like actions. Like as people were entering the tabernacle, there was a way that they entered as they were going to the altar to lay down their sacrifice. There was also another element that they were experiencing and labor and so on and so forth with all 5 stops.
Now, we used a word quite a bit last week, the word liturgy. Again, what we're trying to do through this podcast and through these conversations is help identify and set in a common vocabulary so that these conversations we can build on conversations, right? So liturgy is a word that we're going to use a lot. Liturgy is a very fancy term for tradition, order, methodology,
ordered service.
Yeah.
So the word, sorry, I'm going to give you a little background on that
word
and where it comes from. So it was used of the priests in the temple. Liturgeo is the word that's based on. Yeah. Listen to that. I may or may not have looked at it and had logos pronounce it for me. Liturgeo.
Yes. Okay. Beautiful.
But yes, it's a order and there's specific prescribed stops in every in the journey of worship. So we use that as a guiding principle to guide our worship sets and to guide how we pick songs. Of course, we're going to get into that today with the gate, but just to give you an overview of the journey, it starts at the gate, and each stop has its own characteristics and characteristics, I guess, of each of words that are used and languages used at each stop.
One of the things that was very important in this process of kind of defining these stops. Now, we're going to use the term stops, stations. You can kind of think of them as stops in a journey. We also constantly refer to this as kind of the idea of being like a curator in a museum, that the curator would take you through a museum in order. It wouldn't take you out of order and start with the end and then jump somewhere in the middle and then kind of 3/4 of the way through and then get you all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
That would be herky-jerky and it wouldn't make sense. So there's an order and a process that goes through this. And so another really important thing is that we went and dug through, and I'm still compiling a massive list, but these are kind of I think there's 6 of them here, 6 or 7 scriptures that the scriptures help inform us what describes each of these stops, if that makes sense. So some of these scriptures I'm going to read off quickly. Psalms 100 verse 4 is one of the ones that we use the most to describe the gate. And it says, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. So when we start talking about the gate, this is high praise, right? So this is like the way that I always like to explain this, which I have 2 little kids. And so this is kind of the easiest way because we watch a lot of these movies. There's a scene in Aladdin where Prince Ali, Ababwa, is entering in. He's entering the city, and it is like over the top, fanfare,
elephants,
epic. I mean, camels and flamingos, trumpets blasting, people dancing. I mean, it is epic. It's huge, over the top, and that is the way that I think of the gate. Is everybody was welcome. So even kind of we'll bounce back and forth between this analogy. Everybody was welcome to the epic fanfare, right? So even in that movie, let's keep referencing Aladdin for giggles. Everybody's welcome. This is for all the people in the city to see who is the big deal.
Right.
This is kind of the same idea as that when we are starting out a worship service, when we are starting out a church service, we start from a place of look at him, not me.
Right.
I'm playing the music that's celebrating him. I'm singing the songs that celebrate him.
Right.
So that's where a big part of this comes from, is the scripture helps to inform the message that we're wanting to communicate through these stops.
Yes, for sure. And even to step into your Aladdin analogy, is they were approaching the palace gate. They were approaching the gate, and of course the fanfare stopped whenever they reached the gate, and it was time to enter in.
Sure.
So that's kind of what we're doing here. Is there's a big celebration party. We're anticipating what's about to happen.
Yes.
We're anticipating meeting with the King. We're anticipating meeting with God as we're coming to the tabernacle. I think that's a misconception a lot of times. I guess maybe you haven't thought this, but I've thought this of like the Old Testament sacrificial system was kind of a dreary, like, ugh, I have to go do this again.
Yeah.
No, actually, I mean, the Psalms say otherwise. It was actually a big, like, a privilege. Sure. They really enjoy. It was a reason to celebrate, to be thankful. It was people pilgrimaged from all different parts of Israel, or whenever the Jews were scattered, they all came to Jerusalem for those feasts, and it was a big celebration, a big party of enjoying God and worshiping Him. Sure. So it wasn't just like this duty; it was something that was looked forward to. Yeah. And that's our posture when we come into the gate. And
even the people of Israel in the desert, after they had established this tabernacle and this form of worship, the biggest thing that would have been happening for the Jewish people would have been the Day of Atonement. This would not have been a dreary activity. This is a big deal.
Right, sure.
In one day, the priest is going to go in on our behalf and wash away the sins of the entire nation. It's a big deal.
For sure.
I would have a hard time believing that there was anything but celebration and excitement. And this is also happening at the center of camp.
Right.
All eyes are like, everybody is camping around this. This isn't like far outside and then we kind of build our own thing. The tabernacle is in the center of the people of Israel. Even when they pack up and move somewhere, the tabernacle sets up and the entire nation surrounds it.
Absolutely.
So you wouldn't.
The very center.
And another verse that I'll tag on to here as well is Psalm 95 verses 1 and 2. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. I mean, this is the verse that gives worship leading its framework, quite honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
This sums up what we're here to do.
Like even in the context specifically of our liturgy that we're establishing in a journey of worship, this is exactly like this. Those two verses are like, that's exactly what we're telling people. Mm-hmm. Come and let us make much of him. Yep. Let's extol his name with music and song. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to do.
So that's kind of where we're going to kick things off at. Now I'm going to give you we'll talk a little bit here because we did this with the overview of the tabernacle. There's some historical things that are fascinating that, again, the historical with the scriptural, even kind of with the metaphors that are painted here, it helps paint a complete picture of what myself as a worship leader, myself as a musician, me as a worshiper in service, how I want to prep my brain for what I'm going into. So the gate would have been, and I was having a conversation with Stephen this morning. I was studying a bit about this particular passage, about the measurements and the size of the tabernacle. And for some reason, I just had it painted in my mind that the gate looked a certain way. And after, like, I literally got pens and pencils out and drew out what I was reading. The gate of the tabernacle is the entire width of the tabernacle. So it's not one small part of that east side. It was the entire width, which I love this because the gate is the first of 3 entrances in the tabernacle. Mm-hmm. It's the widest, which is this amazing metaphor for what salvation is. Salvation is a free gift to all. Right. Anybody that wants to come, anybody that wanted to enter the temple or the tabernacle could through this gate, because it was literally the entire size of the opening of which I don't know how many cubits.
Right. But there were several pieces of fabric though, so it wasn't like it was restricted in the sense of like so as you go in the holy place and holy of holies, it was just 2 strips of curtain that you walked through like a normal door. This was like pole and loose pieces of fabric, so you could come through like in different areas. It didn't have to necessarily be through one. It was one side, but it wasn't like funneled down to one entrance, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Another notable scripture that I think is really brilliant to connect to this gate idea is John 10:9. I am the gate. Those who come through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and find good pasture. Another fascinating one to go along with this is John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes into the Father except through me. Mm-hmm. And these all, to me, are really important to have a wide smattering of scriptures that pull from both the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Sure.
Because it'd be one thing if we were just pulling scriptures only from specifics of the Old Testament, talking about this structure, but I couldn't make it make sense with the New Testament or only from the New Testament. There's all of these great spider webs that all connect to each other. And so there would have been no reason for you to enter into the tabernacle unless you were there to offer up a sacrifice.
Right.
So there's no way you are, even in our walk with the Lord, when we come to know Christ, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes unto the Father except through me. You're going to have to accept the free gift of salvation. You're going to have to die to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
In order to have a relationship with the Father.
Yeah.
Which is also me.
Yeah, what's that verse in Hebrews 11:6? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to look it up real quick. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So you have to, those gates, if you want to call it faith, those gates of faith right there, you have to believe that there's something worthwhile.
Yes.
So there has to be an element of faith present in order for you to even enter Jesus' presence. Or this is back in the Old Testament, tent of the tabernacle, you had to believe that there was something there for you. And some benefit to you. There was some sort of reward. So
this is also connected to, you hear this term, a sacrifice of praise, repeated over and over again. The courts, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Bring him a sacrifice of praise. These are all connected.
Right.
Because you're not, again, like we just talked about, you're not entering the tabernacle just to shoot the bull and like wander around and talk to people. You're there to offer one of 5 sacrifices, covering something, connected to something.
Right.
So you'd be entering in, and it was going to cost you something. Again, we've mentioned this before. You're not bringing a casual sacrifice. If you have wronged somebody and you're coming there, bringing a guilt offering or something like that, this is going to cost you something. It's the best sheep you have, the best ram, the best bull, whatever it is. And in the same relationship to what we do on Sundays, ourselves, and we're asking our congregants as well, bring the best of what you have. I know it's 9 a.m. I know it's 11:15. I know that you're not totally familiar with this song. I know this may not be your favorite song, but what we're doing is we are laying down what we want to do, which quite honestly, I mean, we're not going to jump into the altar here yet, But that sacrifice of praise is laying down my preferences and what I want to do. I'm going to warm up a little bit. Just give me a few minutes to kind of get warm here. You're entering the gates with thanksgiving and with praise.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other options.
Right.
You're not entering with casual, kind of lukewarm, looking around. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, some of that we probably take for granted is the fact that we do this every single Sunday.
Right.
Or sometimes multiple times a week as we're having some kind of service.
Right.
But the idea is still the same, is that we are entering any opportunity that we have to enter into the gates of God, enter into his presence. It starts with gratitude, thanksgiving, and sacrifice.
Right.
So we can start to establish here, with what we've kind of laid out here, we can start to establish kind of the attributes of the gate, which is, we've talked about high praise, sacrifice. There's a selflessness that goes along with this, because these songs aren't about me.
Right.
These songs are about you. I want to find songs. I want to find lyrical content that is about God.
Yeah, for sure.
And praising him out of the overflow of my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think another big word too would be thanksgiving, right?
Yes,
there's
absolutely.
something that you're responding to even the ability to come and worship. You're thankful for the opportunity.
Sure.
Instead of treating it as a duty, it's a delight. It's still a duty certainly, but then there's enjoyment, there's reward, there's good things present with God, and we're excited about it. We're not like I gotta come pay my temple tax again.
Well, and I think too,
God can use those things. I'm not saying like you can come, you can come with those or with that attitude, and God can certainly turn that around. But the ideal way of approaching God is with a thankful and grateful heart, because it just catapults you right into the courtyard. You enter, you start your the process of laying down the sacrifice, and you just I don't know. Yeah, it's much. If you come to the gates without a grateful heart, you will stop at the gate.
Yes.
Or that'll be the moment where it's like until you recognize what's happening in here, you can stay on the outside. Sorry, not to be restrictive, but that's kind of like a prerequisite to come in.
I don't think it's restrictive. It's again, we laid this out last week. The liturgy, the order of this is not for God; it's for us. The Lord has laid out these steps. And it's no coincidence that the first one is, hey, it's none of this is about you.
Step one, admit that you're not God.
Yes. Step one. And we say this all the time, that gratitude is the cheat code. If you want access to God's presence, start with gratitude. Start with thanksgiving. It's the easiest way. And even whenever we do this journey of worship kind of process, I even tell people, okay, start with low-hanging fruit. If you don't know what to do in this moment to get started, begin to thank God for the things that you have.
Absolutely.
Start there. What ends up happening is when you start to let that stuff bubble up of what you're thankful for. I'm thankful for my wife, my kids, my home, my job. You start to think of those things. It leads to another thing and to another thing, and then it goes deeper and then it goes deep. Thank you for providing for me.
Right.
Thank you for being present in that thing that it didn't seem like you were present for, but you were there. It has this amazing effect where it just starts to open things up in your spirit over and over again, and it's as simple as gratitude. Right?
Yeah.
So another little historical thing that we'll touch on here, the curtains, whenever you're reading the construction of the tabernacle, the curtains were made with fine twill, which would have been white. Then there would have been red embroidery or stitching, purple, and blue. So there's 4 colors here: red, white, blue, and purple. All 4 of these colors have significant meaning to the Jewish people. They have meaning to us. And when we look at these things, they help, again, paint a more complete picture of what we're talking about here. So let's go through a couple of these. So we have purple, which is the color of royalty. I won't go too far down this, but at this time in history, purple dye was a very complicated process to obtain. There was one shellfish in one region that had to be collected and they had to be crushed up. And up inside of this organism, there was a purple, inky liquid that after crushing it and extracting the liquid, it was purple dye. You had to crush up a lot of shellfish to dye one roll of fabric. So it was going to cost a lot of money. So purple, anybody that had purple, the significance was royalty. Always, always, always.
Symbolize wealth.
Symbolize wealth. Yes, absolutely. So there's a really cool connection for us is that talking about the Hebrew people, this would have been a reminder that they are a part of the royal bloodline of Christ. They're a part of the royal priesthood. That your surroundings may not look like royalty, but the surroundings are deceiving. Surroundings can change. What's in here, what's in your veins is the royal blood of Jesus Christ. And this purple on here is a reminder that that's what you're connected to.
Right.
And the leader, the king that you follow, owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Wealth and royalty you're connected to. You may not see it, but it's very present in the most meaningful way, far more meaningful than wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen race. A chosen race. He's like
a chosen race.
But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light.
That's going to be one of my favorite verses in the whole Bible.
Man.
Yeah, every time I read it, I'm always like, man. And it also makes me think, I think we talked about this on the last episode, hearkening back to Exodus 19, before God gave his people and dwelt among his people in the tabernacle, he said, you are a chosen race. So his salvation and his calling preceded his giving of the law or his asking to do. So there's another like spiritual truth of God's calling of us, adopting us into his family as sons. You are, therefore, now go and do. Not do and then be, but be to do, as Pastor Bo.
Yes, as
Pastor Bo Williams says.
He establishes their identity first and then sets them
you are mine.
into their vocation.
You are my son. Now go and do what I've called you to do. And if you do it, you're my son. If you don't do it, you're my son.
It's brilliant, man. It's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we've covered purple. Now we go to red, representing the blood. The only way anybody could participate in the tabernacle process was through the sacrifice and shedding of blood. So this is a foreshadowing of what you're about to walk into. But it's also a foreshadowing of what Christ will do ultimately to be the perfect atonement for all of mankind. So we've talked about that the priest's job here was to be kind of the butcher, for a lack of better words.
Sure.
To sacrifice the animal, manage all of this stuff, spilling lots of blood. That is a limited atonement.
Sure. It's a provisional, right? It's
just that's the word I was looking for.
It's temporary. It's not. Hebrews says that, day after day, sacrifices were still being offered until Christ once for all came and offered his blood, and he was also the priest, right? So you have this interesting. He was the mediator between God and man, just as the priest was between the offerer and God. The priest acted in that role.
Just such a that is, for like 2 seconds to really think about that. Is hard for the brain to understand that he was both the priest and the sacrifice.
Right. Literally, so real quick, he fulfilled really the entire tabernacle. So every piece or every part of the tabernacle points to Christ theologically. So we're talking, we're using the journey of worship as a for principles and worship as a liturgy. But the theological significance of the tabernacle was ultimately fulfilled and pointed forward to Jesus, right?
Absolutely.
And his ministry and his
does.
death, resurrection. Yeah.
Every step.
Every piece of furniture also.
I totally agree. And so this red color, just referencing Ephesians 1:7, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sin in accordance with the riches of God's grace. The only way that we have access to the Holy of Holies anytime we want is because of the blood of Christ shed for us, which talking about with his last breath, curtain was split from top to bottom, allowing access.
Why top to bottom, Teal? So why top to bottom?
Oh, that's fascinating that you ask. Because, it's really hard to rip a curtain.
Okay, so real quick. So Josephus says that the curtain was 4 inches thick. So imagining a man ripping
that's no curtain,
this
man.
curtain.
That's a wall.
It's like I don't even know what you call that. It's like That's
4
like
inches thick.
it's like a massive so unrippable by man, but of course. So
Totally.
top to bottom, what do you think about
Top
that?
to bottom is heaven coming down to earth. The thin space, it's the reaching down
Mm-hmm.
of heaven to earth because man cannot reach from earth to heaven.
Yeah.
Just brilliant.
Thank you,
And
Jesus.
the parallels in a million different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But also we're here at Mount Sinai. Heaven has come down to earth. God's hand is reaching down to his people. Over and over again throughout the word, we see this moment of a person, a mankind in some form or fashion is in a position where God says, hey, will you let me be your God? And the response is, yes, great. I'll reach down to you. I'll come all the way. You don't have to come one step. I just need the agreement.
Yeah.
I'm asking you if you'll let me be your God.
Here's the crazy thing. Okay, sorry, we're way off. We'll get back to the
We'll get back to the
colors. But the interesting thing you mentioned in the last episode about Mount Sinai being a marriage proposal. I've been chewing on that all week because thinking about that we are the bride of Christ now on this side of the cross. That through His blood we've been grafted and we're being formed into a body, right? I have all these rich New Testament metaphors for what happens to us collectively as we come together. We're brought into His family individually, but we're brought in to be a body, to be His bride.
Yeah.
So you have also this idea of so you mentioned the marriage proposal, God reaching down and saying to you and I, will you be my bride? Mm-hmm. And
him proposing to us.
He doesn't need to be married. It's like God. It's this is the crazy part. It's he, so when I proposed to my wife, I desperately needed some help. So I was like, yes, there was certainly some agape love involved in that, some selfless, I really genuinely love my wife. But at the same time, it was also I need some help.
Yes, it's not good
I'm
for me
lacking.
to be alone.
Yes, exactly. But with God, it's literally there was nothing lacking whatsoever, and He said, "I want to be your husband. I want you to be my wife. Mm-hmm. I want you to come into communion with me. I want you to experience joy like you've never known. I want you to be with me forever." Man, just what kind of grace is that? And what kind of love is that? It's the more we look at this, the more I'm man, how awesome is God, right?
Well, and the beauty of this too is, and I'm not trying to go off on this tangent. This is why it's so crucial that men and women in these relationships have different roles, and that the roles are unique, because what God is saying is, I want to be your provider. I want to be your protector. I want to look out for you. I want to take care of you, because He knows you can't do this by yourself.
No.
You guys out here wandering by yourself are going to be a catastrophe. So let me be that.
Let me be your God.
Let me be your God. Let me be the groom.
He's
your husband.
All you have to do is say that you're not God. And they're like,
okay, can other stuff be a God?
Yeah, can we get a physical representation of you that we can worship? Yeah. He's like, no.
He's like, there's not a single thing you could ever form on earth that could ever do justice.
I love you too much to let you worship this thing that's gonna take your affection.
Another tangent. Okay, we're talking about here. He was so against the idea of avatars or idols, and how gracious that He was like, hey, if you'll do these things, I'll literally show up. No other God in any other pagan religion, in any other society, not the Egyptians, Greeks, name any of them that you want to. None of those gods were able to manifest in person right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do that. You never have to have an idol.
Right.
Have no other idols before me. Have no other gods before me. Don't even try. Well, what about this little rock? No.
What about this altar we built with cutting?
Which is a side note. Yeah. This is a fascinating thing that God was over and over emphasizing to these people who had a very bad tendency for doing this. Also, don't get the nature that I've created mixed up with who I am.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't worry.
For sure.
I mean, that parallels to modern society.
Oh, absolutely.
You have people that are so vehemently against God or Jesus, but have this
Mother Nature,
absolute reverence for creation,
mm-hmm.
the creation, worshiping the creation that the Creator made, but having this vehement disdain for the Creator Himself. It's psychosis. It's craziness.
For sure.
It's why the Lord was so adamant about do it this way, not because I need it, but because you need it.
Yes. Yes. And these things can't help you. They're inanimate objects.
No.
Why are you worshiping them?
No.
Yeah, they can't do anything. All right, back
Okay,
to
back to the color. So we get
so
our
white.
next color is white. White represented the purity. Now I'm from what I have read, the majority of the curtain is white. The embroidery is the colors.
Right.
So the white represents the purity. The sacrifice of Christ makes us clean and allows us uninhibited access to his presence. 1 Corinthians 1:30, God has united you with Christ Jesus for our benefit. God made him to be wisdom itself. Christ made us right with God. He made us pure and holy, and he freed us from sin.
Well, I couldn't think of a better verse to. That's after we've been talking about that for our benefit. God
Yes.
made him to be wisdom itself. Yeah, for our benefit, he sent Christ, not for his own.
Yeah.
And blue.
Blue, let's jump into that one. Blue represents the origin of heaven. So I love this one because this has all kinds of really cool angles to it. So being in the Holy of Holies and participating in the tabernacle flow allows us to engage with heaven here on earth, which I think is a really powerful thing. The Holy of Holies is the thin space. So we use this word over and over again, or this term, thin space. It's where heaven meets earth for a period of time, where it's like all of us have kind of probably been in worship services or a ministry moment where you're like, it felt like time stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like everything slowed down. It got quiet. I got hot.
Yeah,
It felt like
yeah.
all those are times when heaven has met earth.
Absolutely.
And there's this thin space. It creates a thin space where heaven meets earth. Our original home is heaven, and we will return there one day. So I think that too is a helpful reminder to the Jewish people of like, this
Yes.
isn't it.
Yes, for sure.
Even this tabernacle is not it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're headed somewhere, right? So this unbelievable moment happens on Mount Sinai. The natural tendency is, let's camp here. This is the promised land. And the Lord's like, no, I have something so much better for you, but I want you to do this my way. And I'm going to constantly remind you, this is not your home.
Mm-hmm.
This tent, which we talked about last week, this tent is just an ohel.
Right.
Without the sakan, we're just moving burlap and fabric and sticks and gold and all that stuff. We're just moving stuff.
Right.
This is not your home. Matthew 6, verses 9 through 10. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, which I think is a really brilliant verse to connect these two together, is that we're asking this color is such a reminder for the Jewish people, and it's a reminder for us. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
No other form of that. I want this place to be like that place.
Right.
Not that place to be like this place.
Right. Right.
I don't want that.
It's impossible,
It's
right? Yeah,
impossible.
it's impossible because it would. Yeah. It's not physically possible, or not physically, but it's not. The two, heaven couldn't be earth because it's pure. It's God's dwelling place. Man, so we've gone through the elements of the gate. Now, practical worship application for
Yes, the
for
practicals.
for leading worship on a normal weekend. So we mentioned a couple things like the call to praise or like the invitation to worship would happen probably here, right? I've heard you do this several times, and you just mentioned a minute ago of starting with thankfulness, like just beginning the worship set. Depending on the environment and the set, of course, weekend service, you're probably not going to.
Sure.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and start speaking out a
Now,
couple things.
depending on your church, that
yeah.
might work. At our church, it's a little more. It doesn't work like that.
It's kind of a straight into worship.
Because we have somebody that's opening service. We have Pastor Daniel who opens our services at Hollywood Road, and it would be a strange thing to have him open and then be like, okay, hey, real quick, let's do this whole other thing. So the idea here is that we are wanting to start with songs that have lyrical content surrounding the idea of high praise to God. Now, I will say, historically, fast songs in worship have been, they've been a bit of a tough one. They've been a toughie because the idea can be, well, it just seems like everybody really wants to participate in the slower songs. And I'm going to shoot real straight with you because these are the thoughts of a young, immature worship leader. Well, that seems to be what everybody responds to. So why don't we just start with that? Why don't we just go straight there? Now, truth be told, in my young days, my immature days, that's what felt best to me. I felt uncomfortable leading worship to a room full of junior high and high school students, a fast song that required clapping
They're kind of like,
or joy, a joyful response or excitement.
right,
It's
right.
a tough room.
And they're like,
Yes.
yeah, kind of like
Everybody there is just, they don't want to be there. They don't want me singing. Now they eventually warm up. By the
Right,
time we get
right.
to our third, fourth song, we're in it.
Mhm.
Lots of crying, the whole thing, where there's emotional responses. That for me as a worship leader, well, that feels pretty good. That's just emotional manipulation.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly,
You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like if I'm picking 3 or 4 songs that really speak to the felt needs, the things I'm struggling with, I can have a room in the palm of my hand doing whatever I want them to.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
I think there's even part of that though, man. Like could someone get to a Nothing Else, for example, like a Laver Holy Place, like a more intimate fellowship song without being prepared with a song of thanksgiving? Even if they're not
Yeah.
outwardly praise, even if they're not, demonstrably like raising their hands or clapping or whatever,
Sure.
as they're singing and thinking through these lyrics, God's doing a work in their mind and heart to soften them. So whenever Nothing Else comes up, there is something that hits them.
Yes.
So that's where this really comes into play too, of as we're taking them on the journey, even if there's not a emotional or visceral response, we know that this is how God works. Like he works with first, coming with high praise and giving him thanks, and then moving to a place of sacrifice. And then eventually, as they're moving through that journey. So whenever we get to the Laver in the holy place, there is a moment there where their heart's been softened as they've
Sure.
started warming up. And I think if you don't have some sort of like order of service or liturgy, well, first of all, if you have no liturgy at all, you still have a liturgy, right? So there's no way around
true.
it. If you're basing, so you mentioned a second ago, on personal preferences are your liturgy, or trying to get this response from the crowd is what you're basing your order
Sure.
of songs on.
Something is determining
Yeah,
your song choice.
it has to,
Even if you think it's nothing.
because there is an
Something
order.
is. Sure.
Whether you are playing songs in sequential order, so it might as well make
Absolutely.
it have a direction and focus of, hey, communion with God is our goal. Let's start with a song of high praise and work our way through the journey. And it's much more effective that way and produces consistent results because it's God ordained. It's God's principles that he's established in the tabernacle and given us in the New Testament, confirmed in the New Testament.
Well, and we've used this term a lot, but when it comes to building a set list, I like to give the congregation a balanced diet, right? If I just give you only the highly emotional songs, well, now I'm manipulating your emotions. If I just give you the high praise, high fast stuff because it's fun, now I'm just leaning into my preferences. But, you know this with your kids and my kids. If I let my kids pick out what they want for dinner, the whole plate's going to be one color, like yellow or orange. It's going to be mac and cheese, white bread,
And potatoes.
potatoes, dino nuggets. Like that's what it's going to be, is like everything that looks the same. But if I want them, they don't have to love spinach. But I'm going to prepare it where it's not absolutely miserable for you to eat and it's good for you. You need that in your diet, because if you only do the stuff that you like and you only lean into your preferences as a worshiper, as a person attending church, and unfortunately this is what happens when people kind of get into a church hopping mode, is that I'm just bouncing around from place to place until I find what I like. You need a balanced diet, right? There's a family friend that we have, and he's in his 70s now, and like he will not eat vegetables. He will not eat, he won't drink water. Like he's like an old man who is like dead set in, I only do the stuff that I want. His health is in disarray. It's not good. It's not this is not the ideal lifestyle. And that's kind of what, I know it's a strange comparison, but that's what we're talking about, is that I, as the worship leader, have a responsibility to look at the entirety of, I'm taking Pastor Jimmy's sermon. What is he talking about? And then I'm taking this journey of worship as an overlay, and I'm saying, okay, what I need to do here is, I've got 85 songs on my master set list. It's too many songs to pick from to make a 4-song set list. Okay. half these songs are out because they don't go with the topic that we're talking about. Okay, great. So that's narrowed it down. Now I'm trying to find a gate song that's high praise, that's all about God, that puts all the attention and focus on him. Okay, well, that cuts out a ton of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm down to these 8 songs. Okay, now let's find one song out of these 8 that connect with the gate in the journey of worship and that go along with Pastor Jimmy's sermon. Now I got my song.
Yeah.
The beauty of that is now it's subjective.
Yeah. Right.
It's not up to my preferences. Well, what if I've done that song 100 times? It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because at this point, if it follows in line with the journey and it's accomplishing its role in the journey of worship and it goes with Pastor Jimmy's sermon, that I can look at that and objectively say that's the best song for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the congregation persons, as we're moving through this whole journey and we get done with worship and he starts preaching, all these ideas are being reinforced and we come up for reprise at the end of service.
It's true, man.
And those songs are communicating the same message. The same themes are being talked about. It's a powerful experience. Like I've been a part of services where there was not, or where there's discontinuity between worship and the word, but whenever they're saying the same message, it's so powerful.
Well, I can't remember who it was said this, and it has stuck with me for such a long time. Worship is the first sermon. So you are giving your congregants the first sermon that you want them to be thinking about. Do you want that sermon fighting against what your pastor is about to speak on?
Right, for sure.
What if he's speaking on marriage? Then I'm going to do the best that I can to go through his notes, get whatever I can from him. What scriptures are you referencing?
Yep.
What are you going? There are common themes in there that can still I don't have any worship songs. I don't have any worship songs that talk about marriage. But the idea of sacrificial love, laying down my life for somebody else, absolutely, I can find all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
About that. Well, we're doing a sermon series about offering. Great. Let's find some topics about sacrifice. Let's talk about some obedience, submission. We can find songs about that.
Oh, absolutely.
We can dig through that. So our master set list, just for some practicals here, our master set list, I should have grabbed it. Let me grab it because it's worth looking at. Hang on.
This break has been sponsored by.
Been sponsored by Waterloo. Okay, so this is our master set list, and you're not going to be able to see this super well. But you can see it's all color-coded. Now, for those of you that love stuff like this is right up your alley. If you're like the uber creative, I don't like the desk job, this might be a nightmare to you. But I love this. I love this. I can instantly look at this, but every one of the stops in the journey of worship are categorized by color. Now, some of these have some unique colors because the song lyric topics bridge stops. So some of them are gate songs. Some of them have lyric content that are about the gate, but also about the altar. Some are just altar songs. Some are altar laver. Some are laver holy place. So we've got these kinds of ideas, but this helps me as a worship pastor be objective in the songs that I'm picking.
Yes. What so whenever you're looking at picking a set for the week, let's get practical here, and so let's say, for example, this weekend is going to be a topic sermon series on healthy family. I can't remember the exact. I'll have to pull it up. Generosity. Okay, so we're talking about generosity. We're probably talking about some sort of
I can actually show you my set list.
There you go. Possible stewardship.
Yes. So Jimmy is referencing the scripture, John 3:16. Brilliant. I have a song called For God So Loved the World by We the Kingdom. We're going to do that song.
And that is a gate song, right?
That is a gate song. So those are things where it's like, that's...
Come all you weary, come all you thirsty. Yeah,
that is
so very
plainly
invitation.
Right there in my face. Why would I not pick that? Oh, we've done that 100 times. Who cares? Who cares? Well, that's not really my vibe. Who cares? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that song is all about, like, I'm reading through the lyrics in my mind. Bridge is praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Very, high praise doxology, like the we're lifting his name high. It's a quintessential gate song.
And just another little plug. The next song that we're doing is Jesus Forever, which is out now on Spotify.
Coming to you.
Yes. But that song that's a laver song that's all about surrender. I give my all to you. We're talking about generosity. I'm giving up everything that I have to worship you. I've witnessed it, which is a new song that we're introducing this weekend. I've seen your goodness, and I've seen you move, and I've witnessed. What is that? Man, I knew I was going to do that.
you something, I've witnessed it.
Amen.
Just like listing specific examples of God's
I've
power.
witnessed your
or
faithfulness. I've seen you breathe
okay.
life within. So I'll pour out my praise again. You're worthy. God, you're worthy of all of it.
Yeah.
The bridge, you're good and I've witnessed it. You're strong and I've witnessed it. You're constant and I've witnessed it.
Man.
And then our last song is Goodness of God, talking about generosity. We're talking about the overwhelming generosity of God, the goodness
Yeah.
that we've seen. I'm trying to push hard because I'm getting a text from Talon saying that we're at 45 minutes. So I'm trying to wrap up here. Anyways.
What are some, so real quick,
Yes, please.
Gate songs. So give
Gate
me,
songs, yes,
give me
Gate
like
songs.
2 or 3 good Gate songs.
Enter the Gates.
Enter the Gates.
Shocker by the Torvalds.
We mentioned
Great
God So
Things.
Loved,
God
too.
So Loved.
God
yeah,
So
yeah.
Loved.
House of the
Great Things.
Lord. King of Glory. Take You at
Oh,
Your
yeah.
Word.
Yeah, yeah.
The Same Jesus.
Matt
There's
Redman.
Nothing That Our God Can't Do. We Praise You. These are all
Man.
brilliant. Those are all of the Gate songs that we have listed. And those are the songs that we rotate through pretty regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're
all very, it's like the describers that you mentioned: joy, thanksgiving, praise, big praise,
adoration, public acts
yeah,
of praise,
yeah,
renown, fame, object of praise.
and they're all like, they're big. So as we go into the journey, sometimes you have the same words, but they're said in a different way. These are all in the tone also of celebrating God. They're big. They're thank you, Lord, celebratory in a way.
They are because we are. That's what we're coming in to do. Is that, again. Remember back to that idea of Aladdin, that idea of coming in, the big fanfare is we're making a big deal out of who God is, right?
Right.
Making a big deal out of
That's what
who
we're
he's
made to
done.
do.
Yes.
Let's
Come
lift
on,
him
we're
high.
made in His image.
Yeah.
We're helping
worship
people look back. Look at Him. Don't look up here. Look at Him.
And all those songs you mentioned are all, there was none of them that was introspective. It was all, you are faithful, you are good.
Yeah.
I've witnessed, I've seen you do and be incredible, great. So,
All
anyway.
right, guys, we have enjoyed this thoroughly.
Yeah,
I didn't
great.
think we would hit the 50-minute mark on the gate,
We can,
but here we are. This is brilliant. Again, we always want you to know, Tabernacle Worship, this podcast is brought to you by Trinity Fellowship Church here in the amazing city of Amarillo, Texas. We are on staff here. Ronk takes care of the North Campus. I take care of Hollywood Road. And if you are looking for a church home, come to Trinity Fellowship. We would love to have you for a weekend. You can check out our online campus. We have other physical campuses. Go to tfc.org to find out more. And we would love to see you on a weekend. And if you found Trinity Fellowship because of this podcast, we want to know. We would love to know that. And if this podcast has blessed you today, has touched you in some kind of way, we would love to know that as well. Until the next time, until next week,
yes,
we love you. We'll see you later.
see ya.